folks can trickle in as they trickle in. So thanks for coming today. As I'm sure many of you know, we have the SURE Symposium coming up next Wednesday, which is a big capstone undergraduate research symposium for the university. And so this session is going to be a little bit about how to present a research poster and just some tips and tricks around that. I do want to start with just a little bit about the symposium itself, just in case this is your first time at the symposium. Just show of hands in the room and maybe online as well, who has presented at the symposium before? Couple folks? There you go. And online, I don't know if there's a few folks that have presented before. So the symposium, like I say, an annual university-wide capstone celebration of undergraduate research, scholarly and artistic works projects. Most of the projects will be things that were happening this summer, research projects that you folks were all involved in this summer. There are a ton of different research, undergraduate research programs, opportunities, positions that happen across campus, across colleges, across disciplines during the summer. So there's tons of different opportunities that are sort of happening. And as well as some undergraduate research opportunities that were happening in course-based work over the years, or over this past year. So all of those are eligible across campus. So there are other opportunities to present your posters throughout the year as well. Just yesterday, the Inspire folks, who it's an undergraduate research program connected to the CLS, they had a small poster symposium in Ag Atrium yesterday, and lots of those folks will be presenting next week as well at the SURE Symposium. So there are other opportunities. This one's the big one. This one is, like I say, university-wide, all the different programs, all the different disciplines, everybody sort of coming together. We do this in Convocation Hall, and you'll get some more information this week coming from our office about when and how and whatever. But it's a great sort of space because we get lots of administrators and faculty just sort of wandering through during the day, and we get lots of traffic of the public coming through and engaging with your research and those kind of things. So there'll be lots of opportunity to talk about your research, lots of opportunity to engage with faculty and administrators here on campus, as well as the public. So this one's sponsored by the Office of Vice President of Research, and there are awards and prizes that come along with that, and I'll talk about those in a little bit as well. Last year we had about 100 undergraduate researchers registered. This year we have 114 posters registered. So how do we do that, you might ask? We'll break that into 3 sessions. So there's 2 sessions in the morning, and then there's 1 session in the afternoon. So you'll get an email this week telling you which session you're scheduled for. And then if you had us print your poster for you, you'll pick up your poster when you register that morning. And if you are printing your own poster, just bring it along with you for your session. So you'll get all those details this week. So I won't go too far into that. But that's kind of the layout for the day. Are there any questions about that? Like I say, you'll get more information specific to instructions on registration and that kind of thing, but yeah.
Can there be conditions in terms of what slot we want to present at?
So at the moment, you'll just be automatically assigned a slot. There are 114, so it's just, we need to just get everybody slotted in. If for some reason that slot just totally doesn't work for you, on the registration form, we asked if you were available all day, and everybody said, yes, we're available this day. So that's that was why we asked it that way, so that we could slot you in anytime during that day, and that should work. If for some reason there is some extenuating circumstance and you just can't present during that time, yeah, just drop us an email in undergraduate.research@USask, and we'll see if we can switch you to a different time slot. So the judging criteria. So there will be, I think we have 57-ish judges this year, something like that, who have signed up. Judges are faculty, they are staff who have research experience, so research facilitators in colleges and those types of folks in research acceleration and in the office vice president. ADRs, all sorts of folks who have signed up to come and do the adjudication process. So they'll be coming around. They should introduce themselves as a judge when they come to you. Each of them will be assigned, I think, about 6 or 7 students to judge in any one session. You should probably be judged by between 2 or 3 different judges. So everybody will be judged by a couple of different folks. These judges are probably not in your field of study. So they're not matched to your field of study. They are scholars at the university, but not necessarily in your field of study. So when you're presenting, that's going to be an important thing to consider, is that basically they might not know anything about what it is you're researching. So the way you explain it needs to be very clear to a general audience, right? And so that's something that Brett's going to talk a little bit about and just sort of exactly how that approach would work. So the judging criteria that they are coming around to look at, we'll look at that. So number 1, originality and creativity. The project is creative and original. The purpose, outcomes are clear and concise. So again, what was your research project? Is that an original idea? And when you present it, does it make sense? What was your outcome, or what was your purpose for the research, and is that clear? Number 2, title, introduction, and background. The title effectively highlights the subject matter and main finding. The introduction provides adequate background and any limitations. And the research question, inquiry topic, is the main finding is presented. So again, these are some of the things that we would have gone through in the how to create a research poster, and sort of the key things that should be on your research poster. So if you're still working on your research poster, the templates all sort of take care of some of this stuff and can help you sort of design it in this way. Number 3, approach and methods. So clear outline on procedures. The project is conducted in an ethical way. The research or creative process is thorough and appropriate. So how did you approach your research? Are those methods that you used appropriate for what it was you were researching? Hopefully your supervisors were working with you on that as you were doing the research, and that's all clear. But again, this is just you being able to articulate these types of things. So these are the criteria they're going to be looking at. And so if you can say something about each of these criteria in a clear and concise manner, that's going to help the judges to score you better. So that's why we're presenting these, and we'll send all this criteria as well in that information that we'll send out this week. Results, adequate summary of findings or progress so far. Results are understood in relation to the broader context field of study. Are there any questions about those first 4? There's 4 more. All right. Project story. So this is where we're talking about a little bit more about impact. You tell a clear and meaningful story about your project that is understandable to community members. And again, community members being a broad audience. If you were to explain your research to your grandmother, to your sister, to your neighbor, would they be able to understand what it was you were looking to do, how you did it, and what the result was, and what the impact of that is? Number 6, scholarly potential. You show research scholarly or artistic potential through strong passion for your topic, interest in your work, and a solid understanding of your field. So this is your scholarly potential. One of the awards that we'll see is the OVPR Promising Future Scholar Award and the CGPS Emerging Scholar Awards. So what they're looking for in this is that you seem like a promising young researcher. You are someone who is clearly passionate about research, about your topic, about doing these things, and you're developing a clear understanding and interest in your field. Visual appeal and display. So again, this is sort of around poster design. The poster project makes appropriate use of the visuals that help communicate the project. So again, if you've designed your poster in such a way that it clearly sort of somebody could follow through and without any explanation have some clear idea as to what it was your research project was looking at and doing, then that's going to help. And if better yet, if you can connect how you're telling the story with the way your poster flows, so that you're using all of your poster as part of your presentation material, that's great. We see a lot of times, the poster is there, and then students will start telling us about their research project, and they'll kind of, oh, and then this, oh, and then this. Oh, and then this, and they're just sort of jumping around thinking about the different aspects of what it was they were doing and how they were doing and what was important and what wasn't important, and getting into details here and maybe not enough details here, but never really using the poster as the presentation material and saying, this is what we're talking about first. This is what we're going to talk about next, and sort of going through it in that way. So that visual appeal and display, is it visually appealing, but also is it a helpful communication tool? And then engagement, just you communicate your work effectively to a non-expert audience, answer questions, volunteer information, and asks appropriate questions. So again, thinking of these folks are certainly understand research methodology. They understand. They'll understand, the process of doing research, but they may not necessarily understand your particular field of study. So just being able to communicate to them well. They'll ask you questions like, why did you use this method? Why did you use this methodology? Why this? Why? What happened when that happened? Those types of questions. So so just being able to sort of clearly articulate those things. Volunteering information is a good one. So if they sort of take the conversation in one direction, being able to sort of be flexible about that and say, oh yeah, that's this, but then also be able to come back to your sort of talk. So when we are talking about the presentations in grad studies, there's something called the 3-minute thesis you may have heard of. And the 3-minute thesis is a competition where students need to explain their research in 3 minutes. You have 3 minutes, go. Tell me everything about your research in a clear and concise manner, again, to a general audience. And so that's the idea here. And so if you can sort of have a bit of a speech, a bit of an elevator pitch that you can say, this is my research, I can go through the poster with you, and then, but also be able to, answer some questions and go off topic a little bit, but then come back to that and be able to sort of flow between those, then that's going to sort of get that engagement piece. Any questions about those?
How many students are each judge judging? That was a weird way to ask. How many students each judge has?
Each judge has between 6 and 7 students at the moment, to judge. So they're probably going to have about 10 minutes per student, if that. Yeah, about 10 minutes per student is how much time they'll have to be with you. And like I say, they should introduce, we've asked them to introduce themselves as a judge when they come up. They might not if they and they have a form that they'll need to fill out. Some of them are doing it right there as they're talking to you. Some of them are just going to have a conversation with you, and then they're going to go away and fill out their form at another point and think their way through it. So
we actually have like a quiet room for the judges, because we want to keep them happy and like just coffee and treats. So they
Yeah.
might talk to you and then go to the happy room, judge you, and then go back.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
have a question from the chat.
Sure.
Paige is asking, do we need a specific length of speech prepared or is it flexible?
So again, it's flexible. I would recommend trying to put together that 3-minute thesis. I think is a really good approach. Again, it's throughout your research career, you're going to need to be able to do that. That's a skill. You know, if you're talking to media, if you're talking to other researchers on campus, if you're trying to pitch your research idea to a supervisor and trying to get a supervisor, trying to do any of those things, having a 3-minute quick little, this is my research, this is what I want to do, this is what I did do, this is how I did it, this is why I did it that way, and be able to sort of explain and what's the impact of that, tell that project story in 3 minutes, clearly and concisely. That is a super, super important skill. That's why there's a competition for it in grad studies, because that's a skill that you're going to need throughout your research careers for sure. So I would say if you can aim for a 3-minute sort of pitch about what it is that your research was about, that's going to be great. And then that's going to leave them time to ask some questions. They'll ask things like, what's the next stage of this, right? Like, so that's what's the impact of your research? They'll try and fill those gaps that maybe you missed with questions, but they're going to ask things like, yeah, like what's the next stage of this? Where does this research go from here? What gap did this fill that now other research can work with? So it's things like that where that'll eat up some of that extra time, and that's where just sort of the conversation piece will happen. They may interrupt you in that 3 minutes and start asking questions right away throughout it, or they may let you just go all the way through it and then ask some questions. But having that kind of a 3-minute, pitch would be good.
There's another question in the chat, but I'll just reiterate kind of what you said.
Yeah.
I think there's always lots going on. So each judge has 10 minutes to meet with each person that they're judging, right? So you have 10 minutes total with the judge. But if you can get your most important stuff said in 3 minutes, that's gonna allow for questions to be asked, next steps to be considered. So there's no deductions for going over the 3 minutes.
No.
But also keep in mind that people have really short attention spans. So you wanna get the most important stuff in that 3 minutes. And then ask them a question, or then say, oh, there was this other piece that, came through near the end. We didn't get to expand on it much, but that's my next pathway, right? So, think about those 3 minutes as your most important stuff, and then the remaining time with the judge, to kind of just ask questions. Right, so as Jordan said, the 3-minute kind of mark is good for keeping people's attention engaged. It's not a hard, you're not gonna.
No.
It's not like the competition. There is a competition. It's not a competition.
Yeah, this is not.
But it's a good practice. And we'll be practicing a little bit of that in a bit.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So like I said, I would aim for that, and then they may ask you things like, what was the most surprising thing that happened during your research? Where did your research derail at any point? Did you get a surprising finding that really changed things for you? Questions like that. So just think about the whole process of your research this summer. What were the most valuable pieces? What were some major things you learned maybe? Those are going to be kind of questions that they might ask. What were some of the skills that you developed this summer as part of this research? What are some of your goals next year? Where are you heading from here? Maybe if you're in your 4th year, you're going into grad studies. Are you thinking about that? So yeah, those kind of questions. Any other questions there? Okay. Just real quick, I'll just outline a little bit about the awards that are available, and then I'll hand it over to Brett, and they can take us through a little bit more detail about just some tips and tricks for presenting. So we have OVPR, which is Office Vice President Research. That's who sponsors this whole thing, and that's where the SURE program is housed out of. They have the Promising Future Scholar Award. So that's kind of the top prize at the symposium. So there's one of those. CGPS Emerging Scholar Awards, there are two of those. So that's kind of the next two highest scored poster presentations at overall presentations. And then we have OVPR is this year is also sponsoring a course-based research award. So those students who maybe did some research in a course as opposed to with a supervisor over the summer or those kind of things have an opportunity. So if these ones are specific to if you fit the criteria. And these three up here are everybody's entered into those ones. The reason we have the course-based research award this year is because those students who have done research in a course-based thing, they don't have the same sort of access to supervisors, to mentorship, those kind of things that someone who had a summer research experience was able to have. And so they're sort of competing at a slightly different caliber. And so for them to have to compete against, for instance, a fourth year honors student who has had a supervisor for the last 2 years working with them one-on-one, it's a little unweighted. So we have a special award specifically to those students to encourage them to come out and present their research and be part of the symposium and to grow their research skills as well. And maybe next year they'll have done a summer project as well. We then have signature areas of research. So the signature areas of research at the university, I'm sure you're all aware, there are 9 signature areas of research. Areas of research that this university is particularly known for, that we excel at, that we are world leaders in. And so if your research this summer had a connection to one of those signature areas of research, then you could select that on your registration form, and you'll be entered into the possibility of winning those signature areas of research awards. So those are awarded, same criteria, and each of those, so those will be awarded to those projects that are just the top judged and have a connection to those signature areas of research. Does that make sense? Good. Okay. Brett, do you want to take over the? Yeah.
All right, can you do that?
Yeah.
Okay. Awesome, I'll just come over
Yeah.
here. Perfect.
We want to listen?
No, I'll just walk around and click my my laptop. Awesome. So thanks for that, Jordan. And all really kind of based off of what I'm going to be kind of expanding on for you. So apologies in advance if you came to our last session on storytelling a few weeks ago. There's going to be a lot of overlap. Because presentations and interviews are really about telling your story and engaging and connecting with your audience, right? So yeah, it's a good practice to have, no matter if research is your career path, really good experience. Storytelling is hard, right? It's hard to be in the spotlight. So the more you practice, the more you do it, the more comfortable you can get. So oh yeah, I'm Brett Christoph. I work in career services. I just moved over to STM, which is St. Thomas More College, where I actually did my undergrad. You're still a USAS student when you go to STM. So if you're curious about some of the perks and benefits of being and self-declaring as an STM student, I'm more than happy to talk to you about that. And yeah, it's a really great college. We invite you to come and check it out sometime. I'm sure you've probably taken some of the classes as well. before we get started, and in kind of best practices of the university, it's really important to kind of acknowledge where we're gathered today, the privileges that we bring, being here in this room, being young researchers and students and learners, getting to call this beautiful province our home, and acknowledging the work that needs to be done in co-creating a future that reconciles the past, and co-creating a future where all forms of life can flourish. This is a really important reflection opportunity that I would encourage you as young research to think about how your own research connects to the land and the story here. It might not be obvious, but I worked with agriculture students who were doing crop analysis, right? And so I was really encouraging them to think about, okay, well, what's the story of agriculture and Treaty 6, right? How do you see your role as a young kind of researcher in agriculture contributing to that story of Treaty 6 and the path forward, right? It's also really good practice in your presentations, in your poster presentation, to make a land acknowledgement, whether it's just something written at the bottom or you start your presentation with it, right? To kind of ground yourself and contextualize the research and what it means for this place as well as the broader community that we live in. So I'd encourage you to think a little bit about how your research area and your own life just connects with this land and is a part of that story of going forward together. So we've been talking a little bit about presentations and an elevator pitch. And that's a really important skill to have as we've been talking. So I want to turn it over to you to get a little bit of practice for having an elevator pitch, right? So this is just the 60-second brief introduction you're making to somebody, right? A professor, somebody walking by your poster, right? And then hopefully you're engaging them a little bit to expand into more detail, right? So we call it an elevator pitch because elevators are usually pretty short of a ride, right? 30 seconds, 60 seconds. So that's all you have to make an impact, right? And you can do this, with your professors at the end of class when you are, at a networking event, or it's going to be really helpful practice for your presentations at the SURE Symposium. So yeah, really helpful for interviews, presentations, and networking. So it goes a little something like this. Sometimes we call it a FAST pitch, which is a little acronym for your first name, so who you are, your program, your discipline, right? Summarize your kind of, in this context, I guess, summarize your research and project role or what you've done this summer. Summarize what you're interested in and what your strengths are, and then what your goals are for the future, right? So a really, really quick opportunity to make an impact. So I'll show you a little bit about what mine would be. Again, always thinking about the audience and what they might need to hear from you. So my name is Brett Christoph. My background is actually in religion and culture studies. I'm really interested in how we show up in the world and how we can co-create more equitable communities and society and cultures. I'm really interested in idea sharing and getting to know people, very curious individual. And my goals for the future are continuing to support students in finding their own path, as well as I'm doing a mentorship in mediations this summer. And so I'm learning a little bit about how to negotiate, how to resolve conflict, and we need those skills. So I'm really looking forward to the learning there. I don't know if that was 60 seconds, but hopefully it was around that, right? So just something, short and sweet that introduces who you are, your interests. And then hopefully there are some points in there that you might be curious to learn more about. And then that's how the longer conversation happens, right? So if you're online, write something down quickly. It's hard to share online, so just write something down and put it in the chat. And if you're in person, luckily, you can just turn to your neighbor and just take 60 seconds each to give your elevator pitch. There's no right or wrong way of doing this. It might be a little awkward at first. That's totally okay. I've practiced mine many times, so I know how to do it. But the point is, the more you practice, it's like a muscle, right? The stronger it gets. So if you're online, just type your little pitch in the chat. And then if you're in person, we're kind of nicely coupled up already. So turn to your neighbor and introduce yourself, give them your pitch, and then I'll call you back in 2 minutes. Okay.
Hi, my name is Pradesh. I am. I'm science student. And my research is. And then to adapt to stresses in environment. And currently I'm looking at how tolerance of and some of the crop species like wheat and barley. And favorite species and species diversity lines. And I guess one of my strengths is the ability thinking and scientific and observation is another area. Yeah, and in general, my interests are also in identifying how key storage rates evolve and genomes. And which I kind of want to work in side of the problem.
I think it's always good to hear someone else as well, so.
Yeah, I think you missed 3 and 4. What drove you to these kind of things and
They're more about, providing
I'm finding enough to try to explain that, so not like children.
All right, that was, I think, 2 minutes-ish. It's always really long when you're in it and really short when you're just watching. Did everybody get a chance to share? Yeah, okay, I didn't want to cut anybody off. But keep practicing this, write it down, review it, and then just practice out loud, practice to your friends, your neighbor, whoever, right? And just, loosely, right? And the more you do it, the more familiar and comfortable you are doing it. As well as it's going to change depending on the context that you're in, and who your audience is and what your goal is, right? What you're trying to get, for the future, right? Are you trying to pitch your research? Are you just networking? Are you, applying for a job, right? That's going to shift kind of your summary there. I think Morgana was gonna just share their elevator pitch, just to hear another example, put them on the spot really quick, but yeah.
I didn't get practice, so let's do this. So my name, I'm Morgana Makaya. I use they them pronouns. I'm a programs officer at the Research Acceleration Initiatives Office, where I support graduate researchers. But I also connect faculty with each other to do research when they're starting out their careers on campus. So I find like my work relies a lot on bringing people together so they can work together, which is where I thrive too, because I could probably make it work if I work by myself in an office all day or in a lab. But I really enjoy being part of the team, relying on others and have others rely on me. So I would say that that's my strength and comes out my work and my research. And my research background is in women's and gender studies. I study the way that Indigenous women's activists in Brazil connected to fight the war. So I'm very interested in like EDI and all the things that we can do to make make our societies, our practice a better place, a safer place for us to learn and grow.
Nice.
So yeah.
That was really good. I loved it. What I really liked about your strengths and your interests is it wasn't super braggy. It wasn't like, oh, I'm really good at the data collection. And, you know, it was really subtle. It was like, I think that's my strength, right? Which is just very endearing and honest. And so when you say talk about your strengths and interests, it's not like I'm really, really good at this, right? That doesn't come across as, you know, super down to earth. So I really liked how you wove in your strengths in a really organic kind of way. And you could see all of the strengths kind of coming through in what you were explaining. So I love that. That was really great. Does anybody else feel the need to share? Are people on the chat also sharing theirs like I asked?
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, cool. I'm not gonna read all of them, but it is something that you need to kind of write down and practice because otherwise when you're on the spot, it's just not gonna, it's a little bit harder to do, right? So thank you for that. Think about that. That's your kind of elevator pitch. That's making your first story. So you have a judge that's coming around to your poster, but you're also gonna have just people stopping by, right? So this kind of shorter elevator pitch is gonna draw them in and hopefully strike up a conversation. I felt like there were some other conversations kind of happening from the elevator pitch, which is exactly, you know, I have more questions for Morgana that I'll probably ask later, right? Because there was something in that pitch that drew me in, right? So that's what it's all about. We're going to review some kind of top tips that I have for presentations, and all of my tips really overlap between presentations for your research, for classes, but also interviews, right? For job interviews or grant applications that you might be writing, right? These are really transversal tips that can be used in a variety of different, you know, places where you might have to tell your story, right? So the first one that we kind of talked a little bit about with Jordan was knowing your audience. So think about who your audience is, what are their interests, and is their prior knowledge, right? So their interests are, okay, am I just here to learn? Am I here to judge? Am I here to hire someone? Am I a grade 5 student? Right? So you're gonna have to kind of adjust your approach for who that audience is. And a really easy way at this SURE Symposium is just to ask like, oh, what's your name? Who are you? Where are you coming from? Right? Because your judge might not be the same discipline as you. So asking them that question right at the get-go is going to give you an idea of how to adapt your presentation to who that person is, right? So if they are, oh, I'm a history professor. Okay, oh, cool, awesome. You know, my research is in cellular biology, but I know that the history of that, right, kind of connecting to their interests, has been really foundational for my area of study, right? So kind of connecting a little bit of the dots for them. Most people have broad interests, so there's usually a way to kind of connect who they are to your research, right? And you're going to tell your story a little bit different, right? If it's your grandma, if it's your professor, if it's just your friends, right? You're going to adjust based off of kind of who they are. So adjusting your approach, your language, and your delivery style based on who your audience is, right? So if it's a group of really young kids, you might try to make it more silly, more fun, right? If it's a group of professors in your discipline, right, then you can kind of know that you can use some of the big terms and language, right? Whereas if it's somebody from outside of your discipline, you might have to simplify it so that it makes sense for them. That's knowledge translation, right? Science research translation. And so it's very, very key for not only doing really well at the SURE Symposium, but getting more research grants, getting that job, right? Getting your research recognized beyond just you and your department, right? So really good, important skill to have. Having a hook, right? So telling a story is about drawing in your audience, right? So a hook can be a story, an anecdote. It can be a question, right? It can be a piece of data or a quote, something that kind of captures their attention and is also acts as a little bit of a segue into the broader story, right? So it's not going to be a quote that makes no sense to your research, right? But it's going to be something that you can then expand in and frame your research through. Maybe you have some really interesting data that you've collected, right? What's that punching data that just like, wow, that's really interesting. Something to bring them in. Or just a story or a joke or, you know, some sort of connection that, you know, captures attention.
It's good too if you have something that your research is specifically like a problem of practice that your research is actually aiming to solve in some way. Starting with that is always great because it sort of says, you know, in the world, we have this problem of practice. This research is looking to find, solve one of the gaps that is part of that. So let's talk about that. It immediately draws you in because there's impact piece immediately right off the top to say, this is a problem of practice that we're looking to solve with this research. So here's the tiny piece of that I worked on this summer, right?
Yeah. So connecting it to the bigger picture of why this research is important, right? So for example, last summer, I remember, a student did some research on public transit. And had a really good statistic right at the beginning about, you know, how many people like public transit's underused here and contributes to this amount of emissions, you know, into the environment and blah, 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 right? Something that I'm like, oh, okay, I see it's connected to the environment. It's connected to housing and unhoused populations and different patterns of wealth and disparity. You know, so I, as my background, right, in culture studies, can connect right away to a few things there, right? That was not about what his research was, but that was the bigger picture. So I was able to kind of contextualize where the research was and why it was important, right? Keeping it engaging, which hopefully I'm modeling, right? So this is a mini performance, right? So you're using good body language, you're changing your tone and your pace of speech, right? To really draw people in and hammer in some points. You can move around, right? You're using your poster as a guide for where you are, but you also have good body language. That's also, you're paying attention to your audience, right? If they're starting to shift and look uncomfortable or falling asleep, you know, I might do something that, you know, brings them back, right? So kind of keeping an eye on where they're at as well. And humor when appropriate always works to keep your audience engaged. And then the last kind of tip I have, which we've kind of Jordan has already talked about as kind of some of the criteria for the judging of the presentations, is thinking about the gaps, the value, and the next steps, right? So it's one thing to present your research, but then you're just like, and that was my research. Thanks, right? There's still more to be done. This was just, you know, one summer of research, a small piece of it. Thinking about gaps or weaknesses is actually not a bad thing. I know it feels really scary because you're kind of admitting to some shortcomings. But by now, I think you've written some academic papers where it's actually encouraged to identify challenges in research, right? So if you're only doing quantitative data, right, collection, you're missing some qualitative attributes to it, right? So you can acknowledge that this was just a quantitative study and is missing some more detail, right? This is really common in the research world and actually necessary because it's pointing to where more research is needed and acknowledging that this research isn't done. And that's how you get more funding, right? By saying we have more to do here.
And positioning what you've done in, again, that larger field of study, right? So positioning, what I did this summer helped us to understand this small piece. There's more work to be done here and here, but this is where my fit in this larger sort of piece of study,
And researchers know that you can only do a small piece in the big picture, right? So, but pointing to where your next steps are going to show that promising research potential, right? As well as in job interviews, knowing that you have gaps or learning opportunities, that really shows somebody that I want to continue working with because they know that they're open to more learning, more opportunities, that they don't have all the answers, and they're willing to learn again and again to kind of gain that knowledge. So again, for jobs and interviews, identifying, you know, things that you want to work on shows really good potential. I'd rather work with somebody that knows their limitations than somebody who thinks they don't have any flaws at all, right? So knowing your value and how this contributes to the broader research, broader societal problems, is really, really important in telling your story and then talking about next steps in the research. So some questions there, which we've kind of already covered, is what is the value of this research? What are the limitations? And what are the next steps? And that's a great place to kind of end on in your presentation, because then it leaves room for questions and dialogue and, you know, that type of thing.
I will always ask, what's the next steps?
So if you already kind of covered that, then you're, you know, right?
One question down.
One question down, and then you can maybe even start getting into more good, like the meat and potato stuff, like the good stuff, right? Because you've already answered that question. So any questions there? I'm not paying attention to the chat, so Morgana, if there's anything in there, let me share.
Yeah.
So another opportunity to reflect. Where's my next one here? Oh, yeah, okay. So some questions that might be familiar from our last session, but I think are really good questions for you to think about in your poster presentations and in the storytelling that you're doing. So what skills or competencies did you develop or practice over the summer? And so you might not think you have many skills or competencies. I know sometimes it's hard, right? But data collection, time management, resilience, right? I talked to a student last summer who said that the first trials that they did all failed. Nothing worked. You know, and so they had to readjust and think through it again, right? Those are skills, right? And failure is a big part of research, right? So, you know, you have to show that kind of capacity for learning from that, you know, mistake or failure and adapting, right? So those are all skills and competencies. Were you working with, you know, vulnerable populations or Indigenous communities, right? Something that kind of challenged you to get a little bit out of your comfort zone and learn about the world around you, right? All of those are kind of related to intercultural or self-awareness, right? You can even talk about your own growth, right? I was really scared at the beginning, and now I feel really confident in, you know, my lab work and working with colleagues. What are some examples of your learning that highlight your research skills and your research impact, right? So do you have a really good story about something not working out right? Or did you have a really big win? Or what was something you can say or a picture you can paint to let your audience know kind of what was going on over the summer, right? Keep in mind, we have no idea what you've been doing, right? I have a couple slides where we're gonna think through that a little bit. But that's a hard part, right? Because of course, you know, so you're talking about it, right? But I'm like, hey, where was this? When was this? What were you doing, right? You have to paint that picture a little bit for your audience, and then kind of highlighting the skills and your research impact. Another thing to think about, again, in closing, you know, thinking about emerging scholarship and research, how does this experience connect to your academic and career context, right? So I just wanted to learn about research to see if it was a career path for me. And, you know, I did learn that, you know, I really like this and that, and I'm really open to kind of pursuing this as, you know, a future for me, right? That's great. You know, what is it you're studying? What are your goals? Maybe you're trying to get into medicine, right? So how does this research experience kind of allow you to, have a better, stronger application for med school when that time comes, or understand, you know, the human side of the biomedical world, right? And then of course, you know, that bigger picture, how does this experience connect with larger problems of society, right? So your research might be a really small part of a bigger picture. And so showing that you're thinking about that is really strong research and potential. What do you plan to do with this experience? And then again, always, what would you do differently and why, right? Again, showing you're thinking, you're trying to improve, you're engaged, you know, you want to try it again next time and, you know, see what happens, right? So I encourage you to kind of reflect on these. I'll share these slides with Jordan so that you can have these, and they'll just help you tell that story a little bit differently and also help you understand and appreciate how incredible this opportunity has been for your own learning and journey, right? Right now, it might feel like a bit of a drag, right? Because you're inside or maybe you're outside, but you're right, like, you know, it's sunny outside, you want to be at the beach, right? But this is a really good, amazing opportunity for your future, and taking some time to reflect on that just helps make it feel a little bit more satisfying and worthwhile. I always like to have this slide, right? Because the quality of reflection in thinking about this experience and in preparing for your presentation, it's all about depth and breadth, right? So I always say, if everything goes great, think a little bit deeper or a little bit more broadly. If everything was awful, think a little bit deeper and a little bit more broadly, right? So I don't know, I have younger nephews and nieces, and I'm always like, how was your day at school? And they're like, it was good. Right? I'm like, oh, that does not tell me anything. Right? And you know, you kind of want to be like, well, what was good about it, right? And then, you know, you find out that it actually wasn't that good. Somebody, you know, didn't include them at recess and they were just saying good because that's an easy response. And, you know, so you get more out of it when you actually think a little bit deeper and a little bit more broadly about where it sits. And so reflection is a skill. Which we try to really encourage our learners here to do, because it's not an easy skill, because it actually takes time. And again, thinking deeper, thinking broader. And so that'll help you in answering research questions, in doing your schoolwork, and in making, you know, telling your story kind of next week. So we're gonna do a little practice. Apologies if you were with me a couple weeks ago, because this is the same reflection activity, but I really like it. It's called Rosebud Thorn. And it's again, another way of thinking, where are we at for time? Oh yeah, okay, we've got some time. Rosebud Thorn. So it's a really nice way of thinking about the rose, which is the beautiful part of the flower, right? The positive part, the success story, the highlight. The bud, which is the part that has potential, but it needs some growth. It needs sunlight and watering and care to really, you know, blossom, right? So it's just a little budding part. And then the thorn, which is, you know, a part of the flower. Every rose has its thorn, but it's the painful part, the sticky part, right? But it's there, right? So again, another good way of telling a story that kind of touches on all of these aspects. So I want you to think about a highlight or a success story from your summer research experience. I want you to think about what part of your research or skill set needs some nurturing or time to grow. That's the bud. And then what was painful? What was kind of, you know, frustrating or not ideal, but it's a part of the experience, right? And again, I have those little prompts. If everything was awful, think a little deeper, think a little bit more broadly. If everything was great, think a little deeper, think a little bit more broadly. And I'm gonna give you guys some time to practice again, practicing with your neighbor. Again, the more you are comfortable talking about yourself and your research experience, the easier next week is gonna be. So if you're fine with the same partners from before, you guys can just partner up again. Again, just gonna give you a minute or two each, or a minute each, so 2 minutes kind of total. Just to kind of review this and then share with your partner kind of the rosebud thorn of your summer research. And if you're online, you can just type, but it's a really good reflective prompt for you to kind of get the ideas flowing about, you know, how you're going to tell your story next week. All right. I'll give you maybe 3 minutes, a minute to think, and then 2 minutes to share.
Yeah, so I think that there are the research. Is a kind of the concepts work, I guess.
One or two.
Pulling out your little hand, yeah. That's your right hand.
Generally, research rather than sample.
Yes.
It is kind of a lot of time before I look at it all the list.
And then yes.
So that is always.
Ask you questions. Yeah, we're right.
Awesome, yeah, just like,
Yeah.
go through and do something. Then it gets, you know, one or two people come through.
Yeah.
So Those, like, honestly, that. With the most valuable.
Yes.
Driver, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
give you that confidence, so like, okay, thank
Yeah.
you, like, or to this.
I've done it already.
I know when-
Yeah.
How many questions did we get?
Yeah.
Those sort of, I can do that here. But we absolutely no consequence, right?
Yeah, I think that's very well said. No, I think that's great. And like I said, I did a lot. Yeah. So I mean, but you know, we don't have to say, okay. There's a long run, you're gonna get it back, just don't have to. Yeah. One thing I've been saying, right now, we don't have time to do, feel like I'm one or two features, I'm just. Send that out to that. Oh, this is law, and then it comes to law, yeah, no, I think that's great. That's good.
Just need to get enough time to get it.
I know, right? I know.
Always like, oh, it's here, okay.
Well, and yeah,
Doing it.
yeah.
It's happening.
I can't believe it's like the last couple of weeks of August already. It's insane. I think I won't be able to join next week. There's a faculty and staff retreat.
Yeah.
So, but if I can pop out, I'll try. Yeah.
Hopefully we can get attendance this year, again. Last year was great, it was packed in there, like all day, all three sessions, it was just packed, and it was great.
But they showed, I kind of. It's not kind of like.
Yeah, that's just math, it's like, 4 participants, like,
I wasn't sure that the visuals are right, because I know that what's like that's, yeah, really good. So.
I was mostly doing pillars for my project, but I did help members. I did for some things.
Okay, I'm gonna bring you back, although you finished your thought. I always hate disrupting a good conversation. So my question for you is, how was your body language in that little presentation? Yeah, right, it's not what we're thinking about first. Of course, this is a relaxed setting, right? But you want to be aware of your body and how you're engaging your audience. Of course, this is peer to peer, it's practice, right? So I don't expect you to be, upright, straight, right? But starting to think a little bit about, and I saw lots of good eye contact and kind of talking. I'm a hand talker, so maybe I'm biased. I think that's really, helps me tell a story, right? So I like seeing that you were really into it. But those types of things, you'll want to be mindful of when you're practicing. I have some other tips about, dressing to impress, right? And standing up straight, making eye contact, that type of stuff. Really important for any type of networking, interviews or presentations. Yeah. Something else, and maybe I should have shared this a little earlier, but this is an acronym for helping you describe your work, and it's called STAR. So when you're describing your work or something that you've done, this comes up in interviews a lot. It's a behavioral question, right? So they're asking you, tell me about a time you managed conflict in the workplace, right? STAR, answering those 4 pieces there is a really good way to kind of describe the situation for someone that wasn't in that situation with you, right? So what was the situation? What was your research context? What were your tasks and responsibilities, right? What did you do? What was your action? And what was the result, right? And it doesn't have to be all great, right? You can say, okay, so I was doing field research for, I don't know, in wetlands in Canada. I was tasked with taking samples from the marshlands And then once I collected all of those, I brought them back to the lab and categorized them. And the results, I realized that my organizational skills there weren't, it made my work in the lab a little bit harder. So I learned that, when I'm collecting samples out in the field, I have to be really diligent at how I organize those samples and being methodical and very, a good data collector, right? So it can actually have that spin where you've shown something that you learned, right? So describe the situation, the tasks, the action, the result. So just think about the star when you're describing, right? So this comes up in interviews for jobs as well, right? Tell me about a time you have to manage conflict in the workplace or in a group project. And you wouldn't just say, oh yeah, we had this really annoying colleague who just didn't do their work. And it was really annoying, so I went and told the boss, right? You would say, no, I was working in a small group situation. We were tasked with planning an event, tasks. We each had different responsibilities and actions. Mine were this, that, whatever. One of our colleagues, was kind of late in contributing their pieces. So I actually reached out to them, asked them if they needed help, if there's anything that we could do to help them make sure that those were submitted on time. I learned that they had a family death in the family, which was why it was delayed. So we were able to distribute the work a little bit differently, and we got everything done on time, right? So it's a little bit different story than, oh yeah, one of our teammates didn't do their work, right? So it tells a different story. And you're hitting all of those kind of points in the star. And it's helping the person listening have a better picture of what was actually going on, right? So just a helpful way of telling a story for folks who don't know the context that you're coming from. Some other presentation and interview tips. If you haven't heard me say this, practice your talking points out loud, right? So draft kind of your presentation that's, 3 to 5 minutes long. Try to keep the really good stuff in the 3-minute zone, right? As we've been talking about. And then, thinking about possible questions, possible, gaps, possible next steps. Questions that folks might ask you, and practicing things out loud really helps your muscle memory, right? I used to do that as a student, was just say my exam answers out loud, right? When I was studying, because they would stick in my brain more, right? There's a lot of evidence and research on why that is in our brains, right? So talking points, share with a friend, a colleague, can I walk through my presentation with you? And you'll start to kind of feel more comfortable in the flow of delivering that. You can also watch TED Talks or other research presentations to get inspired, right? You're going to see some cool body language, some pausing for dramatic effect, right? You're going to get some techniques that you're like, oh, I like that. Oh, that's good. Oh, okay, this is what, think about your favorite professor, right? Are they very monotone and they talk like this and they stand still? Probably not, right? I don't know about you. So think about who tells a really good story and how can I kind of mirror some of that in a way that's comfortable with me. Dressing to impress. The room in Convocation Hall is small. Well, it's big, but it's, tight with a lot of bodies in it. So it's going to be warm. So we're not expecting, 3-piece suits, but a nice, this is a linen blazer. So it's actually nice and airy. Thinking about how polished and professional you look. Jordan said he's not gonna wear a suit jacket this year because it was too hot.
It's Convocation Hall, it doesn't get great circulation.
It's
Yeah.
stuffy.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of us there.
Yeah.
So,
But a nice button-up shirt or a dress or a skirt, blazer, whatever, is comfortable for you, but also something you would wear for a job interview, and looks polished, put together, and kind of complements your professionalism as a researcher.
I always like the saying, dress for the job you want, not the job you have.
Yeah, there you go, right? Yeah. I always had a funny story if I could share. I had a buddy who was like an environmental surveyor, so he wears boots and, a high-vis jacket every day in his actual job. But he was applying for a job. And I asked him, like, what are you going to wear for the job interview? And he's like, oh, just, my boots. I was like, okay, why don't you wear a dress shirt, nice pants, and you can wear your trainers or, you don't have to wear dress suit, shoes, right? You can have your whatever. And the interview went great, and they saw some managerial potential in him. And so he actually was hired, and they said very clearly, you know, if all goes well in the next 3 months, we see some, you know, we have some managerial positions coming through, right? So had he just worn his high vis and jeans and boots, right? Maybe they wouldn't have seen that, right? But they saw, oh, this guy can do his job in the field and also, you know, be in a board meeting and, you know, be a manager, right? So again, dressing for the job you want, and dressing to impress. Said this already, engage with a story, question, or game. Speak slowly. I'm learning this. When I get excited, I talk really fast. And sometimes I say that, right? Like when I get excited, I get a little crazy. So, you know, slow me down if you need to. But you know, being mindful of your speech, finding that good cadence, that good, you know, you don't want to talk too slowly because then they might fall asleep, right? So finding that good balance, using visuals, minimal text, right, to kind of tell that visual story as well. And then invite discussion and feedback, right? What do you think about this? Have you ever been out in the marshlands of, you know, Saskatchewan, or, you know, like what feedback do you have for me, or how do you see this connecting to your research area, right? Something to kind of engage and put them back, put the kind of attention back on your audience, to kind of invite that dialogue and back and forth.
It's good to have a couple of questions that you might ask those folks that are coming around, just to fill some of those awkward pauses after you're done talking and they're thinking of a question to ask you, but maybe aren't there yet, and there's just kind of this awkward kind of pause. It's good to have a question that you can ask them, just like anything, you know, like.
It depends on your research, right? But you know, the fellow that was doing the bus transit research, right? Do you take the bus?
Yeah, and I'll get sworn.
No, I know, yeah. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I wouldn't if I could drive, you know, if I had a car, right? Like whatever it is, right? So what's something, you know, connecting to your research, or, you know, yeah, having some specific questions, because it's really awkward when you're like, and done. And then people are like,
And then the automatic is, do you have any questions?
yeah, and they're like,
Yeah.
ah.
Like, so.
Yeah, so having some questions prepped, that's also a really good interview practice as well, right? I always encourage folks going into job interviews to have questions for the employer, because it shows you're thinking about the potential here. If you have a really great interview and they go, do you have any questions for us? And you're like, no. You know, then I'm like, oh, you kind of missed your opportunity to create more dialogue and back and forth and get a better sense of who you are. So having some kind of prepped questions, you know.
Even just, is there anything that I could explain better,
Yeah, that's a great question.
right? Is there anything that I went through here that
Doesn't make sense.
didn't make sense, or that, you know,
Yeah.
because that's gonna help you with the next person, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
There's a piece that maybe you can improve for the next person, and maybe
Yeah.
the next person is the judge, and you're like, yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Another presenter last year, who's done really well now, I think, as well, was doing some AI research. And once he finished his presentation, he was just like, so do you use AI? And right, it kind of, I was like, oh, cool, this is, you know, gives me a chance to kind of connect his research, right? So great, you know, what did I miss? You know, what can I explain better? Do you have any, you know, those types of things. So think a little bit about what your research is. We don't know it, so we can't like tailor the questions for you, but yeah. And if you're practicing your presentations with friends or colleagues, they'll probably have questions, and you can write those down and know, oh, you're probably wondering about this. And then you can kind of, you know, dip into that.
That's a good one, yeah.
Yeah. Don't forget to add this experience to your resume or your CV. So your summer research experience is a really great resume building opportunity, right? Even if it's not for a research job in the future, right? So I encourage you to do that now, because I am guilty of this, right? I do something and I don't add it to my resume or my CV right away. And then when I'm updating it, I forget about it and it's missing, right? Or I don't remember the dates, or I don't remember some detail, right? So add it right away. Your presentation, you know, presenter, this is like a mini conference, right? So you can say presented at the Student Undergraduate or Society for Undergraduate Research Symposium 2026. My presentation topic was XYZ, whatever your title is. The dates there, right? It's a great kind of professional development opportunity. It shows that you have presentation skills, research skills, right? So it'll be really helpful for graduate study applications, future jobs that are not even related to research, right? So really good skill building opportunities.
You'll also have the opportunity to submit your poster PDF to Harvest, which is the university's research archive that we keep in the library of all research that happens at the University of Saskatchewan. So it's not exactly a publication, but it's something that can go on the CV as well to say that my research poster that was presented at this symposium is part of the Harvest Research Archive at the University of Saskatchewan. That research is available there. You get a little link you can send your grandma and be like, look, grandma, my research is in the University of Saskatchewan Library Archive. And they go, oh my God, that's so amazing. You get extra birthday money this year. But that's a cool thing. Emily will, from the library, will have a table at the symposium, so you can talk to her directly about how to do that and to get that process going as well, so. And then there'll also be the undergraduate, research journal, editors will also be there, so you can talk to them as well about how you might take this poster and turn it into a paper that they could, that you can publish it within the undergraduate research journal.
Yeah, all really, really good opportunities for your resume, as well as just expanding your network and other opportunities for you in your future. So that kind of was a nice segue into LinkedIn. If you don't have a LinkedIn, it's a really great social media platform for professionals and researchers for sharing information, right? So after the symposium, you could make a post that goes, great opportunity to share my research at, the symposium, highlights for this, if you won an award, I won the award for blah, 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 right? Posting a picture.
Tag the undergraduate research.
Tag your team, yeah.
Team, then we can repost that.
Yeah.
And get, just get it out more a little bit further. And
Yeah, and you never know what those connections are gonna do, right? You might find your next supervisor that way, right? When you apply for graduate school, they might search your name on LinkedIn to see if you're a real person and what kind of stuff you've been up to, right? So it's a really low, and I'm not a proponent of social media. I'm not here to say you need to have more time on social media. We definitely don't, right? But it's a really easy way of getting connected professionally, right? And so low effort, you don't have to do much to make it happen, right? It's also, this is a great networking opportunity at the symposium. So if you have some great conversation with someone and say, hey, are you on LinkedIn? Can we stay connected? Really great way of just kind of finding new contacts and new people to stay connected with. And then when you post stuff and Jordan shares it, then the algorithm works and you get connected to other researchers, other folks that are interested in the same things you are interested in. So the algorithm works for you that way.
and just start building your
Yeah.
research profile and just putting yourself out there as
Yes.
someone who is currently actively doing research
Yeah.
and interested in making those connections. So
Yeah.
just a place where you can put those kind of things and say, I did this, in my
And
research today, or
even if it's just to celebrate yourself, right? Yeah, it's like
absolutely.
your resume that never sleeps, right? It's kind of a living document of who you are, what you're interested in,
It's the first place I go when I'm meeting someone.
right?
Like
Yeah.
new colleagues or new faculty or whatever. It's the first thing I'll do before our meeting is I'll go to LinkedIn and I'll just check out.
Yeah.
What kind of stuff are they doing? What kind of stuff have they been up to in the last few weeks in their posts?
Yeah.
What kind of articles are they linked to? What's their background?
Yeah.
Like what education do they have? Like where are they coming from?
And there's gonna be connections like, oh, they follow this person that I
Yeah.
really like their research, or they went to St. Thomas More College, oh, I went there, making those connections and having more talking points. So who has LinkedIn in the room? Okay, yeah, that's like the majority. Okay, awesome. So I'm preaching to the choir, so keep at it.
And that whole tagging thing is important too, like if
Yeah.
you're at a conference and the conference has a LinkedIn page and you post something, make sure you're like actually tagging them in it, cause a lot of the time they will repost those things, cause
Yeah.
it's more views for them as well and just sort of gets the message out of what they're doing and
Yeah.
and that kind of thing, so yeah.
Yeah, the other thing I really like, because people don't carry, or I don't carry business cards around anymore, is when you go into the LinkedIn app on your phone, you go to the search bar, there's a little QR on the left that's at the, that's the right-hand side, sorry. Little QR on the right-hand side, and that's my QR code, so I can say, oh, let's stay connected, do you have LinkedIn? Scan my QR and we'll get connected instantly. So really quick way of networking. Yeah, so really a kind of great way to look professional and get connected to other professionals. And that's it, I'm gonna wrap up. So that QR will take you to the USask Career Services page, but St. Thomas More, where I now work, has our own career services kind of offerings as well. They're very integrated with the USask. You can book appointments, you can do mock interviews, prep that way. We've got lots of employer events, jobs and volunteering, all sorts of things for you to find other experience. We use this career wheel to think about kind of our career in a holistic way, right? So you guys are having some really great academic and research experiences that are gonna kind of factor into the rest of your career development and plan. And these change as you go and as you grow. So well done for you guys for being undergraduate researchers this summer. It's gonna open doors for you. I can say that confidently without even knowing you. Yeah, well done, and I look forward to kind of hearing how the event goes next week. Hopefully we have some time, yeah, good 12 minutes or so for questions. So anything you guys want to know from any of us? Yeah, happy to help. And to Jordan. A question there?
The time slots, it's not like hour and a half period, is it, like there's not time slots within there where like each person will present, it's kind of just like a.
They're all going at the same
Yeah,
time.
so there's like
Yeah.
38 table spots in each session, and so there'll be 38 people
Yeah.
who will put their posters
Yeah.
up, stand by their posters, and then the public will just come walking through, and yeah, so you'll be standing by your poster and folks will come up and they'll be like, hey, tell me a little bit about your research. Like, yeah, absolutely. So here's what I did this summer, here's, go through your thing, and
Yeah.
then, yeah, and then when they're done, they'll move on and someone else will come. It's pretty packed, like last year, it was busy the whole time, which is great. That hour and a half will go by quickly.
Yeah.
I try and do as little interrupting as possible.
Yeah.
But there's like a little announcements to do and things and whatever, but it goes by quick.
Yeah.
And then if everybody wants to come back at 3 o'clock, that's when the reception and awards ceremony will happen. So you can come back at that time and celebrate the awards winners. You might be one, so be celebrated. And there'll be food all throughout the day. There's a lunch at 1 o'clock.
Kind of like coffee and tea
Coffee,
morning,
cookies all day.
and then some more food coming for the ceremony.
And feel free if you're in one of the later sessions or in whatever,
Yeah.
come to the other sessions and engage with other students. Cause just fills the space, it just gives someone else an opportunity to practice, you know, and that kind of thing. So it's important to sort of support everybody in it, but.
Good question. You're not gonna be on the stage presenting to
No.
everyone. But you'll probably have like 5 or 10 people, around your poster kind of thing. And it is loud, it is busy. So if you're like me and you get overstimulated, you might want to bring earplugs or something for your one ear, right? So you can kind of focus a little bit better. Or I really like some little fidget things that just help me, have it in my pocket and I'm just kind of there. Especially in the downtime, right? Just trying to regulate a little bit. It's because it can be busy,
And
right?
bring your water bottle.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like everything that you need to feel comfortable, it's fun. Don't get me wrong, like it's very.
But it's
exciting,
busy.
like, Everyone, even folks, like I'm an introvert, so being in a room where there's like that constant buzz.
Yeah.
Drains me,
Yeah.
but it's such good energy, it's just making sure that you're bringing everything you need to feel comfortable throughout that hour and a half, because you will be like accessible for an hour and a half.
Yeah.
And, that's where the elevator pitch is so important, because yes, you will prepare the meeting. Like, for the judge, but most people, they are just like browsing, like window shopping, they're not really.
Yeah.
Maybe they will sit with you and like ask follow-up questions, and that's great, but the majority of people are just going it by.
Yeah.
So having the 60-second one will help you save energy too, for when the judge
Mhm.
come about.
Yeah. And you know, if you've ever been at something like that or a little market or whatever, you're kind of like, you're curious, right? But you're a little scared to go forward, right? So invite people, come look, come let me practice, let me tell you about my research, right? Inviting people to stop and listen,
Yeah, and if people come up and are standing in front of your poster,
talk to them.
talk to them. You know, there's lots of times when you'll walk up to a poster and you're just sort of looking at it, sort of reading it or whatever, you know, it's sort of this awkward moment. It's like, do you want me to tell you? But yes, they do.
Yeah.
That's why they're standing there,
Yeah.
for sure. So just, you know, just engage,
Yeah.
just jump in right away and just go, can I tell you a little bit about my research this summer?
Yes.
They'll say.
Yeah, or my research was really cool, let me tell you about it.
Yeah.
We did this, yeah.
Yep.
Was there a hand over here
I
or?
was just gonna ask if there's a registration time. Or if you just.
Yes, yeah, first thing in the morning, and that's actually a question on the chat, when we will find out when our presentation time is.
Yeah, so I'm hopefully sending out that information either today or first thing tomorrow, but I'm hoping today. We're just finalizing the information packages for judges and registration students. So I should have that out to everybody this afternoon, and you'll have your assignments when you're presenting and a full schedule of the day and some instructions, just and also like
All of this.
all this
Yeah.
stuff. So, yeah.
Okay, registration starts at 8:30, and you only have to be there at 8:30 if that's if you're assigned first session. Otherwise, there will be like a registration, table at the front, so you can come and grab your poster according to what time you are assigned. Just give us some room.
The morning one's a little bit earlier.
Like, it starts at, if your session is the second session at 11:30, don't show up at 11:30, maybe show up at like 11:10, 11:15, dress the food, you know.
Especially if we printed your poster, we'll need some time to find your poster, and then you'll have to go and find your table and put it up with pins and get your water bottle set up and whatever you need, right? So.
All good practices to
Yeah.
be early.
The morning one is just a little bit earlier because there's just kind of some opening remarks at 9 o'clock, so we want your posters up before that happens, so that as soon as that gets over, then you're ready to present the parents. But otherwise, yeah, we've sort of got, I think, half an hour in between each time slot otherwise.
Other time will be done. You mentioned hints, are those provided for?
Yeah.
We'll have to explain.
We've accumulated that for the years,
Yeah.
I think it's a little box.
Good question.
Yeah,
We'll have name tags too, so you don't have all that.
awesome. Well, good luck. If there's any other questions, we're here.
Well, I was gonna say, if you have, if there's like a website that connects to your research, your lab, or wherever you were working, those kind of things. Some students in the past have just put a little QR code next to their poster that sort of links to that. So sort of at the end, you can say, if you want to learn more or interested in the lab or whatever, that QR code will take you to more of our research that's posted online or things like that, so.
Yeah.
Just nice, kind of.
And this is more for people who are in the room, sorry, online folks, but we have, this room is booked all afternoon, I think the next thing here is at 6 p.m. So if you, we'll meet, so if you guys wanna hang out and connect